Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here for video 5 of building the coaling tower, so stay tuned. So like I said, welcome back, and welcome to my new subscribers. I do have several new subscribers out there. I was surprised how much I've picked up subscribers in the last several weeks. A little over 700, so I got just shy of 300 left to go to my 1,000 so I can monetize the channel. I'm not sure, but I think my viewing time, I don't know what they require nowadays. They change their rules all the time, but in any case, we'll work on that too. So anyway, we are here to continue our build on the coaling tower. We're going to work on the sanding chutes for the sanding the locomotives as well, which was built into the tower. And you know, the external coaling chutes, we just have several things to do to finish adding details to this building. So we're just going to jump into this. Here we go. So I taking a look at this end, you can see later on in the years they had separated this sanding facility separate from the tower, but originally it was part of the tower. And in this next shot here, well, the next couple of shots, you can see how it was associated with the end of this tower. And the sanding chutes came out of this end before the steam locomotives went under the tower to get their coal. And you know, this is a fairly simple system, and I have some parts that were part of some Teachy kits and stuff, and I thought, well, you know, I can make this work. And these, you know, I can use these, they're meant for handles on something on the right hand side, but I can use those for the sanding chutes, and that other part that they connected to would make a nice part that goes down underneath where they associate with. So to get these, you know, the holes in these chutes here they're a little too small, so I came back and just drilled those out. And then I laid them on their assemblies down there at the bottom, and I measured this because these are mounted in some kind of a steel structure, and to me it looks like basically just an angle piece of steel. So I measured this plastic here at an angle, and going to cut 2 of these because there's 2 of these on the edge of the coaling tower there, and then I mount these units onto that angle iron. And then once this is on there, and I glue it a couple times to make sure it's good and adhesed on there, I go ahead and add these chutes on there as well. Now I'm just leaving these loose at the moment, and they'll spin up and down on these because I just want to get them attached to the coaling tower before I cement them solid. So I'm coming back here and I'm just marking the places on all of the coaling tower. You know, the pulleys are at the top, and then these squares down below. I've got the tubes that come down and feed those, and I've got a platform down below that. So I'm just coming back and marking the tower everywhere. And where these 2 squares that I just made or angle irons attach, I got to come back and just, you know, take the paint and everything off of that down to plastic so that I can get good adhesion. And once that's done, I go ahead and glue these angle irons with this assembly onto both of those spots on the tower where they belong. Now the pulleys at the top, remember I made 4 of these extra ones when I was doing the coaling chutes underneath the tower. So, you know, the square platform that these are mounted on is a little big, so I'm just going to trim those back to even with the pulleys. And I'm going to just come and clean the paint off of the top up here where these mount onto as well. Now these really were at a slightly more of an angle to either side from where they are right here, but you know, since this isn't going to be functional, I'm not really too worried about that, and I'm just going to go ahead and glue these into place. And then I come back, you know, and once all this is mounted on there, now I want to go ahead and cement those filling tubes down there to the proper heights. Now to raise and lower the tubes, there would have been a rope pulley system that went up to those pulleys and came down to these tubes, and I need a way to attach that. And I just found these small eyelets that were part of a ship model I think I had years and years ago, and I just cut 4 of these rings off and glued those on to the top of these sanding chutes. Now there's some other, piping that brings the sands down to these from the tower, and I just have this really thick, heavy, solid piece copper pipe. And I use these tweezers here are meant for bending trip pins underneath KD couplers, but they're great for bending wire in small diameters as well. So I'm just going to come back, and they don't have the 45-degree angle in the pipe and all that there were separate pipe pieces that made this. It's just going to be one piece without all those little gadgets on there, but it's so small and it's not going to be that noticeable. So I'm just bending these to shape and gluing them into place similar to what was on the original coaling tower. And there were 2 of these tubes. They were individual for each of the sanding fill tubes. So I'm just cutting 4 wires and bending those all to place and gluing them onto the top of that. So now we have the tubing that would come out of the tower and go down to the locomotive. Now to raise and lower these, I also have this, I looked at several different types of threads and stuff, and I just didn't have anything the right size diameter. But I had this thread here that was from an old ship model in the sail rigging as well. So I just come through and I run it down through the pulley, and I run it down to that eye hook and the tops of those pipes, and I just super glue that into place. And we just continue doing that across all 4 of these, Here you can see after I had cut it off, I went ahead and started adding in the counterweights up on the thread and just super gluing those into place. And I just keep on coming across. I cut the threads off, I come to the next one and start putting the threads on there while I'm going behind and working on counterweights and other stuff. As that's gluing up the thread on the other side, I come back and add the second set of counterweights to this side. And once the glue is all set up on these, then I just cut off the extra string below the counterweights. And when I was done with that, I came back to this other side again and add the last string on for the counterweights onto the other side. As I was going through and doing all these too, these need pull downs just the same as the chutes underneath. So I just cut some really tiny dowel and started screwing underneath the eye hook sides of these. And I just start coming across and doing that on all 4 of these, as well as I'm waiting for glue to dry ahead of me. I'm coming back and starting something else to be able to let it set up while I'm going ahead again and working. And here you can see I've got the counterweights all done, on both of the pull downs on this. The strings are still below there, so I go ahead and cut those off. And you can see under each one of these sand outlets there's a small platform. So, I just went through all of my stuff and found these 2 different types of open grate platforms I had. And looking back on it, because I'm making the audio for this later on, I probably should have went with the smaller silver platform, but I went ahead and chose these black ones, and I cut them down to the width of what they need to be. Now there would have been more bracing on these, and I don't have any tiny I-beams, but I have these I-beams here, so I cut those off to add to the front edge of each of the platforms. And between there and the wall underneath, there would have been 45-degree legs, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but I'm just going to go ahead and cut those before I get too involved with this. And then I come back and just add an L angle to either side of the platforms. And this is the top side here, but once I get the second piece and turn it over, you can see how the bottom is pretty much, very well supported here. And once I add everything else in, then, it'll make more sense. And once I get everything black painted, it will too. Now the angles that come up and support those, by the looks of the picture, they had a small pipe between the 2 angles underneath of each one of these. I guess it was just to give them some extra support. So I just cut some dowel and figured out the width of where I wanted those underneath there and cut those to length, and I just put 2 dowels between each of those set of legs. Then I'm just using this tester paint here as kind of a 1, 2, 3 block, but I'm just basically gluing that angle into place underneath of it. And once I have that done, I come back and glue those into place. Now where the angles meet aren't perfect, so I've got to come back and deal with that space a little bit. Now at the same time that I'm working on all that, I'm finally coming around to starting this other outside edge with all these coaling chutes. Now I explained once before when I was doing the coaling chutes underneath that, I'm going to use this other type of a coaling chute that Tichy makes, and this is the drawing and all the various parts that go in to make those up. There's 4 parts that make the chute. There's basically 5 pieces that make the piece tube that it raises and lowers from that mounts onto the wall. And these are just a picture of the sprues. They're really nice, small kits for this part. It has other parts here that we use for other things too. And I'm just going to go ahead and make several of these up. I'm only going to show finishing 3 of these, but I just went ahead and assembled all the chutes from the sheets that I had. And these are basically the part that connects to the wall. And I'm just coming through and gluing all that together. And then the chute swiveled on a hinge off of these parts here. And like I said earlier, the chute basically is 4 parts. So I come through and I put together, I take out the 3 that I need out of all those that I put together. And you can see where one of them mounts on that wall unit here and how they, come together. And I just basically take them outside and rattle can them black so that they all have good black paint on them. And then I come back and, where those mounts of the wall, with this paint on here, it doesn't get real good glue adhesion. So I mark where I want them to be and I just scratch all the paint off underneath of that area. Now another thing that I started in the last video and never did finish were these pull downs for underneath the cool chutes down below. After looking at this dowel later on, I decided, it's really not too bulky, but I'm not sure what type of a handle this would have had on the bottom of it. So I just go through and grab some slightly larger dowel and cut really small pieces and glue those onto the end of the dowel just to make kind of a handle on that, and then start gluing those underneath the chutes. Now, typically I just don't do mail calls and stuff, but in one of my video earlier I had mentioned that, I didn't have everything I needed to finish this, so I did put an order into Tichy, and it's came in, so I just kind of want to show you how, I got all that in. Now, next to this coaling tower, there also were 2 of these exact water spouts that would have filled the locomotives with water as well. So I just went ahead and ordered 2 of those in, and that's one less small detail that I got a scratch build. And the platforms that come down from the top of this, I've got some of them started from years ago, but I need more material. So I went ahead and opened more of this open grate platform with all the ladders and the handles and all that kind of thing. I also needed some extra ladders for these platforms on the sanding chutes and all that kind of thing, so I ordered several packs of those. And this is just more of ladders, and this has the safety ladder covers and all that kind of stuff, and a small staircase on it. So this will be the parts that I need to continue on with everything else. So there you have this week's segment of the coaling tower. I would like to have got a lot farther this week. I just had so much going on, but you kind of get the idea of where we're headed with this. We still have a lot to do on this. The walkways from the top with all the stairs and the platforms all the way down around. We still have a little concrete building to build off of one end. I'm not sure if it had if it's where they kept everything for the mechanics of the building or what it was, but the stairs as they come down to the very bottom of this do touch on the roof of that concrete little building and then go on to the ground from there. So we've got to build that little building. Because I'm storing all this stuff until I have a layout, I will probably not attach all that down at the very bottom. We might build everything and just leave the last couple of glue parts apart so I can, store it safely until I'm ready to use it on a layout later on in the future when I have a layout. In any case, we'll be back next week and continue this and see how far we can get then. And until then, thank you very much for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. I appreciate my new subscribers. I've picked up quite a few since I came back and started posting all this again. Still got a good ways to go to get to my 1,000, but everybody out there is working on it. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. It helps my analytics, and there's a little more views coming onto my channel for the scratch build and all that, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And the point to all this, there are people out there that do better scenic buildings and weathered buildings and all that. I kind of try to build things that give me the flavor of what I'm trying to depict. I'm not looking for every single rivet and all that type of a thing on the builds that I do. This building might be the first one I think that I've ever done as far as weathering and that kind of stuff when I get down to that point. So when I go to mount everything I build on the layout, there's going to be more work that is involved into finishing them for the layout as well, with the weathering and everything. But the point to all this is just that you can do this. I don't know why so many people are I don't know, they just don't feel like this is something they can do, or it's more than they want to get into or something. Scratch building is really not that hard. It does take time, and a lot of that time is just to figure out how you're going to scratch build something. Where are you going to get the materials? I try to bring up the companies I get materials from on here, and when it comes to scenery and stuff like that, I get a lot of stuff out of nature, and use for my scenery details. And we'll go into some of that in some other shows later on. But the whole point to all that is that, just jump out there and build something. Whether it's a small outhouse, whether it's an outdoor building, whether it's your house, whether it's a railroad structure, a firebox, several of those small things I have built in previous shows. So if you go into my view list and see, you'll see fireboxes and billboards and milk houses and all kinds of small structures that would be easy to start with, just to learn how to scratch build. And after you do a few, you get better and better and better. I could spend more time and make these more realistic and weather and all that, but I'm more focused on the trains themselves and not the buildings. If I get all these buildings put together and put on a layout eventually, you're going to see that, man, that's Crafton, or man, that's Billington. It's just going to be obvious, and you're going to get the flavor of what's going on, and then you can watch the trains. In any case, it's not hard. It's time consuming. That's my whole point. Jump out there and build something. Enjoy your trains. It's the winter time, so everybody's got their toys out playing. Really enjoy that time. It's a good escape from the real world to create your own little world. And all that being said, happy model railroading.